The shackles are off. Donald Trump announced today on Twitter after House Speaker Paul Ryan became the latest senior Republican to back away from the candidate following the publication of a video showing Trump bragging about groping women. He went on to say that disloyal Republicans are more of an impediment to victory than, as he called her, at Hillary. Then he went into Twitter overdrive, throwing insults at John McCain as well as at Paul Ryan. Many in both parties, Republican and Democrat, have been wondering aloud how it is that the election race and the country have come to this. What is going on that so many will vote for a candidate who stands so far outside all convention? Gabriel Gatehouse has been to the town of Youngstown in Ohio to see if he can find out.
Trace the arc of American history, and it runs through the state of Ohio. In the golden age of post-war America, politicians came to Youngstown with the promise of an ever brighter future. As the country thrived, so did this city. In Youngstown today, there's a feeling that America isn't working anymore. Donald Trump promises to make America great again. And beyond the bluster, the buffoonery, the offence of his campaign, that is a message that resonates deeply with millions of Americans. We've come here to find out why. Youngstown was once at the heart of a thriving American steel industry. A place of opportunity and hard work. A place where each generation could expect to be a little more prosperous than their parents. Somewhere along the way, something went wrong.
We need to, for lack of a better term, stop the bleeding here. We've lost enough and we can't stand any more.
In Ohio, the average household is nearly $10,000 a year worse off than it was at the turn of the century. Chad Witherstein is a Trump supporter. Not a bigot, just a thoughtful American father of four who sees no future for his family in the status quo.
You can't have a new car and a new house, and that's why, the idea that we would have it better than our parents, I see it pretty bleak at this point. And we've done a real good job at creating entry-level positions. There's a new McDonald's open. Well, minimum wage, you can't raise a family on it.
Plaza Donuts opened its doors on the 22nd of November 1963. The day John F. Kennedy was shot dead. In that America, the Democratic Party could rely on the blue-collar vote. No longer.
What he stood for in 1963 has nothing in common with the Democrat Party of today. Nothing. They have lost touch with us as the working class. They don't represent us. In the Republican side, they really don't faithfully represent us either. And now we have a man who's standing on the outside of that.
Trump is effectively a third-party candidate. In our quest to understand this phenomenon, we're going to be spending time with people who work 2, even 3 jobs to try to make ends meet.
People look at Donald Trump and they say he's a clown, he's a buffoon, he's a bankrupt businessman.
That doesn't bother me. He took the risk and he created jobs. Obviously, he knows much more about business than I do. So I'll trust him. I'm willing to trust
He
him.
doesn't know as much about having a second job to make ends meet.
This is true. This is true. He knows probably nothing of having a second job.
The steel mills began to close in the late 1970s. Throughout the 80s and 90s and into the new century, jobs evaporated. In 40 years, the population of Youngstown has shrunk by half. Even in the suburbs, behind a facade of affluence, many middle-class families are barely clinging to a lifestyle they could once take for granted.
More than likely, I'm thinking our kids will probably have to move away.
If you walk around, there's so many people looking for work, and there's just nothing out there. I mean, even Taco Bell's filled.
When she lost her job as a technician in a medical centre, Carrie Pascal and her husband Anthony set up a real estate business. Then came the crash of 2008. They went bankrupt, and Youngstown took yet another hit.
Why do you think Trump's the person who can sort that out?
My version of that is he's not a politician.
They've had control for so long. It's always been career politicians that run. No, there's never been anybody that was an outsider. It's the same old. That's all you're going to get is the same old, same old.
He could shake it up to such an extent that it starts to fall apart. Does that worry you at all?
No, because I don't think it can get any worse than it is now. It's never going to get better. And this is like our one chance to do this. I don't know if we'll ever see somebody like this again.
Some of the other things that that have made people feel uncomfortable about him, especially some of the remarks he's made about women. Does that bother you?
Oh, I have no problem with it.
I think our media slaughters him all the time. I mean, you turn it on and they just rip him apart constantly. And that makes me like him more. They're actually doing a bad job. If they want me to dislike him, they're making me like him more, because I look at the media not liking him, the Republicans that don't like him, the Democrats that don't. There's so many people. I've never seen so many people united against one person.
Do you have any more to say about those comments about women from 2005?
Trump's remarks about women may eventually prove to be his undoing.
I don't even think she's loyal to Bill, you want to know the truth.
Donald Trump has charged into Washington wielding a verbal wrecking ball.
And really, folks, really, why should she be, right?
Yet millions of Americans are still willing him on. He calls his opponent a traitor and a criminal. He's called Mexicans rapists. He wants to ban Muslims from entering the US. He's even refused to reject the support of the Ku Klux Klan. But he presents these remarks as an attack on the liberal consensus.
The American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back.
You won't find much support for Donald Trump in this part of town. His assault on the norms of political discourse feels dangerous, as if it could legitimize a racist backlash.
Y'all need to reel him in and check him. Right. So, you know.
Ryan Gilchrist has run this barbershop for 20 years. Like most people in Youngstown, he voted for Obama. But after 8 years, he says little has changed.
I was glad to see that a black man achieved that. On those premises, and those premises only, am I glad for President Barack Obama. But did he really help us in this community? I'm not going to say that he really did.
Many will vote for Hillary, but many won't vote at all. Somehow, in this election, it's Trump who's taken on the mantle of change. And even here, there are a few who think Trump is a risk worth taking.
Maybe it's a Hail Mary, what we call Hail Mary. Just throw the ball up and see who catches it. But it would be great to have a different view, even if it's just for 4 years. Just for 4 years. Just give this man an opportunity to see what he can do differently.
There's a battle going on that's as much about what can be said as what might be done. As the gap between rich and poor has widened, so too has the gulf between liberal and conservative America. And in that space, the Trump candidacy is fomenting a cultural insurgency. There are still blue-collar jobs in Ohio. Compco Industries makes parts for pressurized storage tanks. Chad, whom we met earlier, works here. Among these men, there's a feeling of alienation, a sense that they've lost control of America's cultural identity.
I understand the gay thing, and I can live with all that. But when we start supplying, bathrooms and different types of rooms and all this other kind of stuff, and titles, things for people that don't want to be considered a man or a woman, I think we're going too far.
My thing is illegal immigration. The word's illegal. Illegal. What does that mean? Hey, not allowed.
It does feel, I don't know, maybe you don't feel, but you're not free to express your opinion, because you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're homophobic, or depending on whatever the topic is, you're no longer allowed to have an opinion.
And that's a key thing about Donald Trump, isn't it? He says things that nobody else says, right?
I don't always agree with everything that comes out of his mouth, but he says it. And we shouldn't be afraid to say it. That shouldn't be a problem here, of all places in the world.
Whatever happens to Trump, the political parameters have shifted. Many people see their country run by an elite whose allegiances, cultural and economic, lie not with them, but with other elites around the globe.
The deals are backwards for us. What do we produce that's being exported?
And this, in a way, is the system that the whole globalized world is now based on. Mm-hmm. And Trump saying,
America first.
America first.
Right.
Why do we care about the global system?
Everything about Trump's campaign, from his crude rhetoric to his cut out the dead wood attitude, it all adds up to one aggressive sales pitch. This is America, where you can still have it all. The story of America today is not one of universal decline. In many parts, this is still a country of vast wealth and dynamism. But the middle class is no longer growing. It's shrinking. 20 miles south of Youngstown is the Great Ohio River. It forms in Pennsylvania, flows west to the Mississippi, and then south into the Gulf of Mexico. This artery, which has transported pioneers and traders, weapons and steel, has been a witness to the building of America with all its hopes and flaws. The Trump phenomenon transcends the traditional divisions between left and right. It's an expression of a much more fundamental shift in America's democracy. This is about a breakdown in the relationship between the people and their government. America is a country where rituals matter. In Youngstown's relatively affluent suburbs, the high school football derby brings people together. These are people who have a track record of picking presidential winners. As ever, they are starkly divided. We've come here to catch up with Carrie, whose daughter is busy out there somewhere, waving the flag for her team. And here's the paradox. For Carrie, her conservative values are best served by a man who threatens to bring down the establishment. People in Britain and in Europe and in other parts of the world are quite worried by some of the things that Donald Trump says. What do you think about that?
To me, I think it's time to put America first. I really, truly believe that. I feel like what's going on right now, it isn't working. So why not try something different? If it fails, we failed under Obama.
It's worth the risk, is what you're saying.
Yes, it's worth the risk. I think we have to try something different and drastically different.
So it has come to this. America is contemplating a leap into the unknown. The normal rules appear to be suspended. Their standard bearer may be an offensive showman, but millions still believe he's the one to make America great again.
Gabriel Gatehouse reporting. Well, joining me now from New York is Catherine Rampell, who is a columnist at the Washington Post. Good evening, Catherine. Before we talk about the kind of Twitter storm tonight from Donald Trump, can we just talk a little bit about Youngstown? Because it was quite clear there that these are people who've thought about this a lot, and whatever flaws Donald Trump has, they're willing to overlook them, or in fact they're irrelevant to them because they think they've got the last throw of the dice with him.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. That they think that politics as usual is not helping them. That the politicians who are already in Washington, a contingent that is apparently in cahoots with Hillary Clinton, do not have their best interests at heart. And Donald Trump represents something else. Maybe that'll be something bad, maybe that'll be something good. He's almost like an experimental drug, right? That you'll try something different and maybe the side effects will be terrible, but maybe there will be an upside. And I think that's the psychology behind a lot of the fervor supporting Donald Trump.
Well, after Paul Ryan, the House Speaker, said that he could no longer support Donald Trump then said the shackles were off, and an awful lot of people then tweeted, goodness me, we didn't know they were on in the first place. And I wonder now if in these last 4 weeks things are going to get not only dirtier, but also divisive within the Republicans, because the Republican National Committee has come out behind him, but 40 senior Republican senators in Congress have come out against him, 30 of whom have actively said that they won't vote for him.
Yes, the question is how many more will join those leagues, right? There were a number of politicians who came out against Donald Trump, Republicans from his own party, immediately after that tape leaked. After the debate happened on Sunday night, when Donald Trump didn't appear to completely implode, that seemed to staunch the bleeding, and Republicans are if not necessarily wholeheartedly endorsing him, seem to have stopped the steady trickle away from his campaign. Of course, for several months now, arguably since he started, in fact, over a year ago, there has been an uneasy relationship between the Republican leadership in the United States and Donald Trump, where they have not been wholly supportive of him, but they are afraid of alienating his devoted followers, the Republican base. So going forward, they're having to balance whether they should openly condemn him, whether they should openly unendorse him, perhaps vote for his rival, Hillary Clinton, who is despised by the Republican base, whether they should do all of those things and potentially risk turning their more loyal followers against them because those followers are also devoted to Donald Trump.
Yes, and this idea that he is now emerging as a third-party candidate, in a sense he's emerging as an independent candidate, and when all the tawdry stuff comes and goes round, fundamentally what people are looking for is an answer to their economic woes, and they don't see that with any of the elites in Washington.
They don't seem to. I mean, there's also a question about how much of this is based on economics, how much of this is about economic stagnation. And I certainly feel for the many Americans who feel like their standards of living have not improved. In fact, they may have deteriorated. But there's also another side, obviously, to Donald Trump's appeal, which is sort of the angry, white, feeling disenfranchised vote. People who feel like their place in society, their relative place in society, not just in economic terms, but in social terms, has been falling. That there are minorities that are rising, maybe at their expense. They see this as a sort of a zero-sum game. And there's a very large part of Donald Trump's rhetoric that is explicitly appealing to those feelings of racial resentment, ethnic resentment. So it's not, I don't mean to say that it's entirely about economics, although that is clearly a part of this picture.
Catherine, thank you very much for joining us.